Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Semester 2 of the Performance Driven Academy. We are now going to begin the webinar that focuses on marketing. It's really marketing communication, and what I'd really love to encourage you as you're listening to this 12th webinar to really develop an understanding of what it really means when you talk about developing a marketing and communication plan, because it is such a critical component to being successful as a performance-driven organization. Of course, you really want to be able to have the data to show that you've made an impact, but also really important is to be able to communicate that impact to your stakeholders, and very, very importantly, your payers. So just a word as you're thinking about this. This is not the fluff part of marketing. This is about the importance of really sharing your story with others. As always, the Performance Driven Academy is brought to you by the Managed Technical Assistance Center. That's led by McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research, as well as the Center on Addiction. Again, this is John Lee speaking, and I'm the director of CCSI Center for Collaboration and Community Health, and CCSI is one of the upstate New York partners for the Managed Care Technical Assistance Center. A couple of reminders. Please, if you haven't already done so, complete the feedback survey in the chat box. That should be readily apparent to all of you. Another reminder that webinars are recorded, and you should have received the materials ahead of this webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar at any time, just feel free to place those questions in the chat box, and we will make sure that the panelists see them, and we'll have an opportunity to respond to those questions at the end of the presentation. And any questions at all, always feel free just to send us an email at pda@ccsi.org, as you see on the screen. So from participating in Semester 2 of this Performance Driven Academy, we're hoping that you're finding that you're better positioned to know your costs, to know your quality, and know your impact within the broader system of care. All real important things to consider, whether you're anticipating moving forward with a value-based payment contract or simply need to be finding yourself held even more accountable for demonstrating the impact of your services. That you're able to take steps to integrate knowledge gain and transfer knowledge within your organization. That you feel supported in your efforts to become performance-driven, using the tools and the resources that we provided. Again, we always would love more feedback. If there's something that you hope to see that you didn't see, please let us know. Again, you've got the PDA@ccsi.org as an email to send that. That you're able to see some of your agency's growth and improvement through the evaluation, which will be coming soon because we are winding down. This has been 12 months of information and in-person sessions, and we're on the home stretch. And we're hoping that you feel proud of your agency's commitment to performance-driven principles as a result of your participation. Certainly, we're pleased that you've stayed with us throughout this year of webinars and in-person sessions, and hopefully you've gained from it. Today, you've seen this particular graphic every time that a webinar has been presented and every time there's an in-person session, because this is our way of pulling together all the parts and pieces that ultimately make up a successful performance-driven organization. Everything from key processes to infrastructure to the importance of collaboration, both within your organization and external to your organization, and so importantly, the culture that supports all of these things to really blossom. So this is that graphic, and what you see highlighted today is the area of marketing and communication. And this is our map that shows the pathway that we've taken. We started this quarter with strategic planning. We then looked at monitoring population characteristics. Today, we're talking about marketing and communication. And we're going to have those in-person sessions coming next week or into the following week. And then those that participated, you will receive a certificate of completion with our thanks for your participation. So we're heading on the home stretch. That car should be a little bit further along the road as I see it, but it's our visual. So again, today's webinar is on marketing communication, and speaking with us today, our expert on this topic will be Diane Nouvelle, who is the Honey Marketing Manager, as well as Carla Mancuso. She is the Public Relations Consultant for Honey. Hopefully many of you know what Honey already is. Honey is Health Homes of Upstate New York, and specifically it is a management service organization that actually provides back office support to 5 health homes in the New York State area. And actually they cover 54 out of the 62 counties among those 5 health homes. So they provide back office services, which include billing and training and quality assurance, and do some really incredible work that ultimately allows these health homes to operate cost effectively. As you might also guess, it's not always easy to explain what a management service organization does and how it relates to the actual health home. So Diane was brought on board as the marketing manager to help really figure out what the strategy and the communication should be to make sure people have an understanding of what is Honey, what are these health homes, and how to really encourage both providers of other services and even service recipients to consider health home as a place to receive good care management, and also to move the conversation away from, is health homes a home, a house? And hopefully now people know that's not the case, but if you go back to the early days of health homes, that's really what people were wondering about. Where is that home where we can go to get care management services? So I just have to say Diane's done incredible work in giving structure to an effective communication plan for Honey, and she's done it with the support of Carla Mancuso, who is an independent consultant, more than 20 years of experience in marketing and communication, and we're really pleased that she's been a part of that team. So what I'd like to do now is turn the presentation over to Diane.
Good morning. So we have 3 learning objectives for today. The first is to discover new strategies to increase engagement with your agency. The second, we'll identify some techniques to communicate service offerings most effectively. And our last learning objective is to reinforce methods to generate awareness among key audiences. And Carl and I will be sort of exchanging roles as we go along. So before we look at how marketing supports your efforts, I want us to really think about what marketing is. And marketing is the management of the relationship between the agency and the segments you serve. Oftentimes we think about marketing in terms of public relations, in terms of handing out a brochure, but it's really about managing that relationship. How are we engaging with the markets or segments that we serve? And how does that engagement ultimately help us deliver a service?
And when we look at the funnel that is shown on your screen right now, this is your traditional sales marketing funnel where you really start at the top by generating awareness. So that is key to marketing your service, your offering, your organization. Because if you don't have awareness, you're never going to get to the last step, which is action. So first, you want to generate awareness. That, in turn, secures interest and engagement among your stakeholders, your customers, your constituents. They begin to consider your organization. They evaluate you along with potential competition, and then they move to action. So when we get to the action stage, you really want them to choose your organization. So how are we going to best make you the #1 choice? So by using successful marketing techniques, including some of the tactics we'll discuss today, you will effectively start at the top with that awareness building and move them to action of selecting your particular organization.
So the first step is knowing your customer. And I know we say customer, there are folks who say consumer, your segments, your audience, but do you know your customer? What motivates them? And if you start just thinking about that, writing down these answers, what are their common objections? What are some barriers that they're facing? Do you know the demographics of your customer? Whether it's an agency, whether it's a member you're trying to reach, How do you get that information? How do you do your research to determine who your customers are? What problems can you help them solve? And how does your presence help them achieve a goal or overcome a challenge? So when we looked at the target customer, and again, you can use consumer, stakeholder, we have our internal customers and we have our external customers. So thinking about your internal customers, so you're thinking about your employees, you're thinking about services, different service offerings that you offer. So your agency may offer behavioral health services, you may offer job training. So thinking about all the service lines within your agency, listing those are your internal customers. Thinking about the employees, those are your internal customers. Thinking about your external customers, who are these stakeholders? For Honey, we have our primary care physicians, we have clinics, hospitals, schools, community-based organizations, existing and potential members. These are who we have identified as our external customers. Who are the folks that we need to target, who will influence the work that we do and may impact the work that we do. So if you think about that and start listing your external customers, that will help you to determine how you engage with them, the kind of messaging that you will use to engage with them. And then it's who are we missing? And this exercise is good for you pull a group of your employees together and you say to them, okay, who are these stakeholders? Are we missing anyone? In terms of your community work, who are we missing here? So it's good to identify this list of both your internal and external customers or stakeholders. Now, how do we manage these experiences? Do you know, would customers recommend your agency to family and friends? What are they telling others about their experience? Do you know that? How do you capture this information? Who is competing for the members that you want to serve? Now, at Honey, we conduct focus groups among our members. So we have maybe about 30,000 members that we serve, and we try to conduct about 5 to 6 focus groups every year, just to understand their experiences with Honey. And that helps us determine, would they recommend the agency? And some of these findings we use to inform our training. We'll change our training based on what we're hearing from our customers. We'll perhaps start a new initiative based on what we're hearing. What are they telling others about their experience? We know that word of mouth is important. So are they telling them something that's negative about Honey, or are they talking about a positive experience? And how can we use what they're telling others to help us? So that leads me to what we call our marketing audit. And all these questions are part of this marketing audit. An evaluation of our current marketing efforts to determine a plan of action. First, to determine, are there gaps? And we look at this both internally and externally. So, do we have a written mission statement? The mission statement sort of dictates what we do in our marketing plan. It drives our marketing plan and our communications plan. If we have a mission statement, do our employees know what this mission statement is? Is it up on the website? Do we have it in our walls of our offices? Do we have a written vision statement? Do we have marketing goals? Can we identify those marketing goals? Do we have them written down? What marketing materials do we have? And we went through this exercise, and it helped us to determine where our gaps were, what we needed to work on. So do we have brochures? Do we have promotional items? Something as simple as, do we have a tablecloth when we go out to community events? Do we have our materials are branded? So these are some of the questions you ask yourselves, and you start writing down these answers. How effective do you feel your external communications are? Do you have an annual report that you can share with a managed care organization or with a community-based organization? How effective do you feel your internal communications are? Do your employees know all the services that you offer so they can begin to talk about the services? Do you keep track of the number and source of referrals generated? And how do you keep track of that? Do you do monthly, quarterly? Do you look at the type of resources? How would you describe your target audience? Do you describe them in terms of demographics? Are there other ways you want to describe them? But as you start to answer these questions, you start to look and see, okay, these are some areas that I need to concentrate on. These things we already have in place. Do you have a list of potential referral sources in your county or community? So this is all part of the marketing audit, and I know you'll have that as part of one of the tools so you can start answering these questions.
And once you've conducted your marketing audit, then you will best be prepared to determine which communication strategies will work for you in terms of that awareness building and that marketing push for your agency or organization. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of those opportunities, many of which are fairly inexpensive and could really maximize some things that you're already doing within your agencies or organizations. So we're going to transition to talking a little bit about public relations. What is public relations from a communication strategy standpoint? Public relations is the practice of creating and maintaining a favorable public image by a company or organization. So the benefits to public relations would be you could increase your brand awareness, build your relationship, and enhance your brand image. And by doing this, you're spreading information between your organization and gaining exposure to your key stakeholders or audiences so that you could generate that interest, that awareness for your organization. These are earned media tactics that we're going to talk about today to help support activities such as open houses, fundraisers. So again, these are activities that you could already be doing, but not thinking that potentially there is a unique audience in a media outlet that could then serve as a conduit to communicate your message to your key audiences. So in public relations, you would be targeting your local newspaper, whether it's a daily or a weekly, any magazines, any television media, radio media, etc. The benefits to public relations would be, as I mentioned, these are earned. So this is where you actively pitch them what you're doing so that they would in turn come and cover your event. So they would be that third-party validation that is so much more credible than if you were to, let's say, buy space. And oftentimes that's much more expensive than if you were to have someone craft one of the tools that we're going to share with you today and encourage the media to come and attend your event and then cover it. So write about it, produce a segment on their TV or radio shows promoting your event. This also helps build trust. Public relations helps build trust among your organization and your key constituents. So as part of public relations, a big piece of the puzzle is storytelling. So what are people saying? What are you saying about your agency or organization? What are your constituents saying? How are they going to help you tell your story? These are really important, and we're going to talk more about how you can craft your messaging in a takeaway tool that you're going to have as a follow-up to this presentation.
And one of the things we did at Honey when we had our focus groups and we heard from the members, some of their stories were so powerful that we said we needed to be able to capture these stories. And so we videotaped their stories, we wrote their stories down because they were just so powerful, and we recognized that the member telling their story would have more impact than an agency putting together, a story saying these are some of our outcomes. So both go together. But we found having the member testimonials, getting this feedback from the focus groups were very critical to Honey and getting their message out.
Absolutely. And oftentimes the media will want to talk with someone who has that firsthand experience with the organization, and that'll further provide credibility to our outreach and what we're doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about grassroots marketing, which is an effort used to really saturate the community with talk about your organization. So the goal is to keep your organization top of mind by finding a way to continually share your story. A grassroots campaign is typically focused on audience and intent. So this is where we look at participating in local events, partnering with referral sources and local businesses who could potentially have additional resources for you to leverage and maximize in your outreach. So when we look at benefits to a grassroots campaign, it really enables you to work within a limited budget. You build movement quickly, and I'll be giving some examples shortly. You can build your brand awareness or generate brand awareness if you don't have awareness within your market at this time. This could really help you do that rather quickly. And you create trust and social responsibility with a grassroots campaign. So some popular examples, actually one that I'm sure most of you will be well aware of, is the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. So that's a classic example of grassroots outreach, where the organization that had very little awareness capitalized on what was going on and an opportunity to really get audience interaction through their Facebook approach to the campaign with the Ice Bucket Challenge. As a result, they had explosive social sharing, they tripled their research budget, they've developed 2 new drugs for clinical trials, and this is a very good example, albeit high level, but it's really to share with you what a grassroots outreach campaign can do. Additionally, from a local level, we want to look at opportunities for you to tell your story in a way that benefits your organization. So seek out those strategic partners. Maximize your resources, right? So you want to collaborate with other service areas, potentially participate in local fairs, any meetings or projects that will help leverage your organization, sponsor a sports team, local celebrity partnerships. These are other opportunities for grassroots outreach. If you do have a national counterpart, consider looking at what they might have going on and how you could potentially leverage what's already being done. So for example, Laundry Cares Foundation, nationwide organization that holds free laundry days in cities throughout the U.S. It aims to let you do laundry supporting low-income families. Does that align with your organization or business? And if so, how can you leverage that? Open houses, offer free health and wellness consultations. Anything that is complementary to an existing service would be a potential partnership opportunity for you and would constitute as grassroots. We're going to talk about community relations. Community relations aligns nicely with grassroots in that it really looks to an organization's interactions with its local community. So always looking for ways to maximize outreach in and around your service areas. Organizations use this to maintain mutually beneficial relationships with their community. It helps you build goodwill, and it helps you raise awareness among your key constituents. Now, what are some examples of community relations? You potentially take interest in a community issue. Look to leverage something that's already going on, potentially sponsoring youth activities within your local community. Volunteer at a partner organization. Encourage community education. Look at maybe volunteering at a food bank, soup kitchen with your internal teams. Make your office or on-site facility available to community organizations. Support local fundraising drives. Perhaps a local leader, your executive director, could give a talk to an area organization and business about what you do in your organization. Now we're going to talk a little bit about a few tactics that you could implement yourself in sharing your story among your key constituents. So we're going to talk about what is a press release. Press releases are used to propose stories to reporters. So this is where you're going to draft a short, compelling, news-like story that you write and you send to targeted members of the media. The goal is really to pique the interest of the journalist or publication to want to learn more and ultimately write a story about your organization. So we've included a sample for you that gives you an outline of how to go about writing a press release. So most importantly here would be the for more information contact, because you want them to be able to contact someone, to ask questions, determine if they could come to your organization, find out more information. So you want to be sure to give your contact name, your phone number, and an email address, if at all possible. Additionally, the headline. This is where you grab the attention of your media audience. So in this case, you want to be sure that your headline grabs the attention so that they want to know more about whatever is going on. And in a press release, you want to give the who, what, when, where, and why. And again, this is all indicated within the body copy of this sample. And you also want to include a quote from a main leader, executive director, whoever is in charge of whatever you might be talking about. So this is where you would put that information. And then lastly, you want to end your news release with some type of standard background information about your organization. And with all that, you send it to the local media and you make your follow-up calls to determine whether or not this is something that is going to run in the local paper, or perhaps they might be interested in doing a larger story about your organization. Media alert, unlike a press release, is more of a snapshot. And this is the who, what, when, where, why in a bullet format. And again, you're going to see shortly the example that we shared. But this is to encourage media coverage of a specific event. So something that is quite visual, perhaps you're having a walk or a run and you have 1,200, participants running around your downtown, all wearing pink shirts for breast cancer awareness. That is already starting to create a visual in our minds, so that if you put that detail in the who, what, when, where, and why, a television station is likely to say, you know what, that sounds like something that would be of interest and quite visual, so that we'll send a camera crew out and cover your event. Additionally, you want to add a point person to your media alert. So we'll look at our example here. So you're going to do the what and the photo op. So the what is the brief statement of what's going on. The photo op would be, as I indicated, the more visual piece, because you want to give them something that is going to pique their interest and let them know it's something worth photographing. Who on site would be their person to speak to. So ideally it would be the person in charge of whatever this event might be. It would be your executive director. It would be perhaps another partner who is joining you in this, whatever the effort might be. And then the when and where, obviously, so that they can get to the right location. And again, as with the press release, one of the more important pieces, in addition to the photo op information, is to be sure they have a person to contact, a phone number, and an email address, so that if they get lost, they can't find where they're supposed to be, they don't have the person they want to interview, they can call you on site and coordinate all that information. An additional tactic that you should certainly consider for your organization is what we call a fact sheet. From a marketing communications standpoint, a fact sheet is really important because it is an at-a-glance tool that is used to provide an overview of your organization. And again, this isn't a snapshot kind of format so that it gives the media, even your constituents, stakeholders could be given this fact sheet because it gives the relevant information to provide a succinct overview of your organization. The reason it's included here is because oftentimes it accompanies a news release. It could sometimes replace a brochure, or it could supplement a brochure. This is something that oftentimes changes and updates frequently, and it's easy to do so when it's in a Word format. So we suggest you consider a fact sheet, and we give you an example of the Honey fact sheet. And this is a great two-page. I suggest we keep it at roughly 2 pages. I think any more than that gets a bit muddied and should be probably more in the form of a booklet or a brochure. So in this way, the fact sheet about honey provides a brief description of what Health Homes of Upstate New York is, the services it provides, its partners, what it means to be a care manager, the care manager network, Honey's reach, the referral sources, and then for additional information, visit the website. So at a glance, you get the gist of who Honey is, who they serve, where their, what their reach is in this fact sheet. So this is a great tool for you to consider developing if you don't already have one in place. So lastly, we're going to talk about key messages in terms of another tool that you want to develop for your organization. Key messages are main points you want your target audience to hear and remember about your organization. It's highly likely most of you already have specific key messages that you share with your stakeholders, your constituents, your consumers. It's important because these key messages help you control the communications about your organization. They help define, create, and headline anything you want to discuss from an organization standpoint. So I've given some examples here in the next slide for SirCare. SirCare, for example, provides Medicaid beneficiaries with coordinated health and wellness services in the greater Syracuse region. That's an important message that SirCare shares, and it's consistent among their care managers and their internal teams. Additionally, they want to offer information about membership. So SirCare supports more than 3,000 members on the road to successful recovery and an overall healthier life. Last point, SirCare offers primary care physicians an effective and trusted resource to support Medicaid-insured patients. So here, you see in our points, we really give an overview about SirCare as an agency, then we talk about SirCare and its members, and then we hit our referral sources, SirCare and the physicians it supports. So these are 3 main points. These are key messages shared from this organization, but we're hopeful that this will help you guide your key message development. So pick those 3 to 5 key messages, key information points that you want everyone to say and take away from your agency, And those are what you give to all of your teams, your internal teams, your management teams, anyone who is going to be speaking about your organization, so that the messaging is consistent. Consistent messaging goes out, consistent messaging comes back. So that's what you want people saying about your organization. So that's why key messages are so important. What we've developed for you next is what we call a communications planning worksheet. And this is something that you're going to be able to take with you. So I urge each of you to take some time after this to consider these questions about your organization. If you had to describe your organization or agency in 2 to 3 sentences, what would you say? What are your organization, agency differentiators as compared to your closest competition? What are the 3 most important points about your organization or agency that everyone should know? And lastly, list 5 words that you believe capture the spirit of your organization or agency. Now, these questions will help you form your key messages. So we suggest getting a group of leadership or teams within your organization who have an idea of what should be said about your agency or organization, and brainstorm, have a brainstorm, fill out this worksheet, see what the consistent messages are, determine what you want people to say about your organization or agency. That will help form and develop what will result in your key messages. So as we round out this presentation, we want to be sure that you look at how to measure your success. So communication-specific process metrics should be tracked consistently throughout a time frame, right? So you want to track perhaps quarterly. So if you start a campaign, oftentimes you may not see results for a few, 3-4 months. So let's look at perhaps tracking results on a quarterly basis. You want to review your results. Determine, okay, let me look at these different tactics that were used. Was this the best, most effective method of communication? This will also enable you to adjust, bend and flex depending upon what was successful, what wasn't successful. Keep a log of running results. Some of the things that we can look at would be number of referrals secured as a result of a specific tactic, any new contacts obtained as a result of outreach. From a PR standpoint, look at the number of story placements secured as a result of an employee tactic. Maybe you track website visits, website form submissions, website information requests, social media likes and engagements. This would include comments and shares. Any traffic obtained from social media posts, any mentions, content shares by third-party social pages. So this would be any partnership organizations, any complementary service organizations, and you could do the same. If they're sharing your content, you should consider sharing theirs as well. So if you are active on social, look at opportunities to share each other's content. Impressions from earned media placements. So that could be, impressions would be how many viewers, how many people read the paper, looked at the news, heard your radio cast, whatever it might be, those could be considered impressions from the earned media placements. You could also consider website traffic from online earned media placements, impressions and reach of paid advertising. So this is a metric, but we didn't talk today about paid advertising. Of course, it's something you would measure if you were implementing a paid campaign. If you're looking to assess event success, perhaps your outreach is done online. You are looking to track numbers of event attendees as logged or registered online, right? So these are just some samples of ideas and how you could really measure and track the success of your marketing campaign.
So as we look at the takeaways, how can, how can I get started? What can I do today? The first takeaway is identifying your key customers and stakeholders. And you may already have a list, but I would sort of jot down who I think my key customers are, who the stakeholders are. Again, as I said, get a group of your employees. They may have some different ideas, and you generate that list of your key customers and stakeholders, and then think about how you can engage them in different ways. Because you would not engage your member in the same way that you would engage, say, your board of directors or an executive director at a CBO. The second takeaway, obtain customer and stakeholder feedback. And many of you may be already doing this, but not in a formal way. So how do we do that? Think about the members you're serving and perhaps conducting some focus groups to get the feedback. So that's your qualitative information. And then having quantitative information, having an annual customer satisfaction survey. What has been your existing members' experience with your service? And think about getting stakeholder feedback. Again, a CBO may have a different experience than, say, a church or primary care physician's office or a clinic with the services that you're offering. And how can you use that information in terms of your strategic planning, in terms of the data that you're starting to track? So those are some quick things that you can do to get started. Or perhaps for every member that comes into your agency, there's one question that you ask. How satisfied are you with the services that you received today? Something as simple as that. And then your care manager or the person who's providing the service can write that down, and then you think of a way to collect that information. And so if you're seeing 100 members a day, then those are 100 responses a day that you can really get feedback on. Conduct a marketing audit. Again, it's that generating that list of questions, meeting as a group, writing down the responses, looking at the gaps. What are some things we don't have in-house? What are some things we have? Do we have the support from HR to do some of these things? And then making those adjustments. And then determining the best approach to telling your story to generate awareness for your agency.
And then lastly, to really utilize the communication tools we discussed today to best communicate your message. And we urge you to really take a peek at that communications worksheet, leverage the questions and the opportunity to gather your groups together, brainstorm what messages are most important to your organization so that when you come out with communication, it's consistent in the form of those key messages. So does anyone have questions?
And while we're waiting for you all to chat in any questions you might have, I have one for Diane, and that is, I would like for Diane to share what value she obtained from bringing in an outside consultant to support the marketing efforts for Honey.
Well, as a one-person employee of the marketing department, it
And many of
really
you
helps.
can relate to that.
Right, yeah. It really helps to get outside support so that we could be up and running. I think if I was the only person doing that, it may have taken me maybe 6 to 8 months for us to really start our marketing plan, review our marketing materials, and get going. With getting outside support, it allowed us to utilize their expertise. So we had 3 or 4 persons sort of helping us develop some of these materials. And what was good is that the company we used, they were in the healthcare industry, so they had other clients in the field. And so they could use some of those materials, some thoughts, considerations that they got in working with some of these other clients to help us in determining how we wanted to approach our marketing. So I think it helps when we have outside help initially. Many agencies don't have marketing support, don't have that one person who is responsible for marketing. And so there are times when you'll have to consult and hire a contractor. And so I think that really helps us in terms of getting up to speed quickly.
So one of the things you mentioned is you really felt there was value in that the consultants you hired had healthcare experience. Are there other criteria that you might suggest folks consider when they're trying to decide who is the best fit for them?
Just looking at the work they do in the community. There's some agencies that do a lot of work nationally and not necessarily community-based, local. So it's looking at some of the clients they've had and just some of the experience that they've had. We interviewed agencies before selecting a particular agency, trying to understand some of the clients they'd worked with, how best they would work with us. Would we drive this effort? Would they drive it? So some of those things were considerations for us at Honey.
I do have one question. Someone's asking if you could please explain earned media again.
Okay. Earned media is media coverage that you secured as a result of outreach that you've done versus media that you paid for. So typically paid media would be advertising, earned media would be public relations, because you would pitch a story using a press release, a media alert, and it's earned because you send the information and it comes back to you in the form of the media outlet covering your story. So you've earned that coverage versus you say you want to run an ad in the newspaper, you give them $500, and it runs exactly as you intended. That's paid.
Please feel free to chat in any more questions. We still have a few minutes. We'll just hang on for a few more.
Okay, we do have a couple of other questions, and one, the question that I asked about how you determine who might be the best consultant to hire, Carla had an added perspective to that, and I think it's important that she share that as well.
Yep. What I think is important when you're looking at how you could maximize your communication approach, really looking at external partners who can give an outside perspective to what you could be communicating that perhaps you're not thinking about. So I think that's a big benefit to working with a potential outside partner and really working together to develop the best plan possible for your agency or organization. And again, you could either look at an agency, you can look at an independent individual that could potentially help you maximize what your spend is in terms of your marketing budget, because I know that that's a big concern and something you always want to look to maximize. And
I think the final question, which is kind of closing the loop and bringing us back to the whole purpose of the series, is what do our experts really see as the role in marketing communications in supporting the development and the maintenance of a performance-driven organization? And any perspectives that you have on that would be really appreciated.
So for me, marketing sort of weaves its way through some of these infrastructure measures that we have here. When we think about effective measurement practices, how do we communicate that? How are we communicating our outcomes to our constituents, our stakeholders? How are we communicating that to the managed care organization? It's all about packaging the information and packaging it in such a way that it's understood. It's in these little sound bites. We know people like to text these days. They don't want long pieces of information. So how do we do that in such a way that we can get our message across in terms of what our outcomes are, who we are as an agency, what are we about, what are our values? When we look at monitoring population characteristics, that's also part of marketing. It's who are these people? What are their demographics? How do we get feedback from them? How do we monitor what they're doing? How do we engage with them? A large piece of this is managing the engagement with our stakeholders, which I see as a big part of this performance-driven academy and performance-driven that we're moving towards.
And to support what Diane was saying, in terms of promoting outcomes, results, the testimonials piece that we talked a little bit about, it's important to see that all of these pieces come together to really establish that those keys, like that competence, right? Your agency is competent. You're credible. You're a credible resource. And then giving your stakeholders, your constituents, that level of confidence in your ability.
Any other questions? All right, so feel free to email either pda@ccsi.org or Carla's email if you have other questions. I'm sure we'd be glad to do our best to follow up. And a reminder, we have our last series of in-person events taking place in the month of December. Registration is still open, so that means we have room for you. We're going to be at the Albany Marriott. This sounds like a sales job, but really we will be in Albany from 10 to 2 on Monday, this coming Monday, and we'd love for you to attend. The focus will really be on tying all these pieces together, performance-driven work, and with a special focus on supporting effective strategic planning. We'll be in Rochester on December 4th at the Memorial Art Gallery, and in New York City at the Kimmel Center on the 10th of December. So hopefully you can join us, and any questions about those in-person sessions, always feel free to email us at pda@ccsi.org. So thanks for your participation today. I hope you have a great afternoon.